there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to have heaps of fun with some heat embossing today. Now I figured this out, I don't even know what to call this technique, but it was super fun to try and I am just going to get right into creating here. So I have a piece of 80-pound cardstock and I am using my VersaMark ink pad to get ink all over the front of it. Now I want to get the whole front panel. I am going to cover it in some gold embossing powder. This one happens to be from Ranger and it is the super fine one. Now this technique does not involve a whole lot of tools except for the VersaMark and then the embossing powder. But then I was just looking around and I found this re-inker bottle, but use anything, and I am simply going to literally scratch into or draw on the embossing powder before it is heated, obviously. So you can see that with the shape of the top of the re-inker, I'm getting some kind of thin lines and thick lines. You could use the end of a paintbrush, the end of a pen. You could use any little tool or something that you had sitting around your craft desk. I'm going to shake off all of those excess bits and I'm not going to put those back in the container because they are mixed with the VersaMark embossing ink and they are not going to work very well if I tried to emboss with them again. So here I'm doing the same thing. All I do is I cover the panel, the whole front panel, in the sticky embossing ink. I am going to do a different pattern this time around, and this is sort of very DIY. I was having a whole lot of fun, but I am going to make these into some cards and show you just how gorgeous they can be and that you don't need lots of fancy tools. So here I am just putting some lines. I am going so fast. I am not trying to get these straight or perfect. This technique is not really about perfection. I mean, surely yes, there are ways that you could make it really neat and trying to use a ruler and things, but it was really just about having fun for me and kind of letting go a little bit and seeing what I could create. So once I've put all my lines in, I am going to just tap off all that excess embossing powder. And then I am actually going to heat set these two before I move on. So you can see that the lines are staying there and the really fine lines that I put in are kind of fine scratches. But when I turned the re-inker bottle cap a different way, I got those nice thicker lines. I really love the one on the left. I couldn't wait to play with that one. So we are going to turn that into a card today. Then I just wanted to show you kind of one more technique that I was doing with this, what I had fun with, and that is layering up the embossing powders. So I'm going to do the exact same thing again, take a panel and I am going to pop the sticky embossing ink. Now I've said this before, I've tried many embossing inks and I have come back to the VersaMark one. It is slightly pricier, but it is definitely worth it. It's worth getting the re-inker, and definitely make sure that your ink pad is nice and juicy so that you don't face the frustration of getting not great results when you add your embossing powder. So this one I just chose to do silver just for something different, and then I am going to do kind of the same thing. I'm just going to pop some little lines in going both ways so I create sort of a diamond pattern. Not neat, not straight, not well thought out. I was just completely having fun and videoing it while I did. Then I am going to melt all of this one, so melt the complete first layer. And then I kind of, in previous videos, a couple of videos ago on my channel, I had layered up embossing powders by stamping over top with a different color. And I thought that I would want to do similar here. But I do enjoy the idea of not always having to use fancy tools and things. So for this one, I'm going over the whole entire image again using the VersaMark ink, so the same sticky embossing ink. Then I am adding copper embossing powder over top of the silver. Pour the rest back into the jar, and that's all I'm going to save. Then here I'm just going to use my finger and wipe along those lines so that I get a slightly wider line right on top of the scratches that I already did the first time around. Now I can see them through the copper embossing powder, so that's not hard at all. I'm just going to turn my paper the other way. I used my pinky finger because it was kind of the smallest and I didn't want it to be huge lines. You can come in and clean this up a little bit with a dry paintbrush, Or, I mean, you could even try and kind of brush in some details. I don't know. Have fun, have a play with it. If you end up using this technique, I would love to see it. I will leave links to my Facebook page, or you can tag me on Instagram and I'll be able to see your creations there. But I'm just melting this like I would any other project, and you can see I've got the silver there, and then you can see through the white as well. So there are so many opportunities. I was having so much fun. So for the sake of not keeping this video too long, I've just shown you the 3 options here that I created, and I am going to turn this left-hand one into a card today. Now, because I scratched off the embossing powder, I can still add ink into all those open white spaces. So if you want to color this to suit your project, now's the opportunity. So I used a little bit of Seedless preserves, and I have gone all over top of the finger dauber. Remember to wipe off all the excess ink that will be sitting on top of our embossing powder, and that kind of takes away that cloudy look as well. So you can see that all of those little scratched in lines have now turned that kind of purple color from the Seedless preserves. And I mean, have a play around with which inks work for you. I didn't try pigment inks for this technique. I stuck mainly with dye inks, but I was having fun. So I am going to use Simon Hurley's Sentimental Flowers. When I am looking at a stamp set and seeing if it is worth the investment, I want to make sure that there are really good sentiments and really good images. So this one definitely fits the bill. I know I've used this in lots of videos, and you're going to see it in lots of videos coming up as well, because I like getting good value for money. That is so important. I am choosing one of the flowers and then a couple of leaves. Now I am going to stamp this with the Distress Oxide ink. And sometimes with Oxides, I get a really good image. Mainly, I get a pretty good stamped image, but it's not always perfect. So I am going to do these in a stamping platform. Now, I inked the leaves here as well, and that was not my original intention. I was just happily inking up and stamping away here, making sure I got a really nice, good impression with a dark, crisp ink. And I was just kind of so happy in my little own world there that I forgot I didn't want to do the flowers purple. So I'm coming back in with some peeled paint and some mowed lawn. I'm going to ink up one and then stamp it with that color, then add a little bit of the peeled paint and then stamp that back down just to give a little bit of variation into the color of the leaves. It gives them a little bit more dimension as well. Then using some nice thick vellum, I am going to add the sentiment. This is from the stamp set and it says, "Hello friend." I'm going to use my anti-static powder bag, which is really important when heat embossing on vellum. And again, just using that VersaMark ink. And this time I am going to heat emboss this with some white ink. Just so that it will stand up off my background, and I already have a whole lot of colors going on, and I was happily kind of avoiding black for this card because sometimes I lean on black as a nice finishing color, and I felt like white kind of brightened up the card a little more. So I have moved my heat tool over the vellum really quickly so that I don't get any warping at all. I am going to fussy cut out these images right up next to the line, which is nice and easy because these images have a thicker outside line to them. That's something I definitely look for when I am going to fussy cut an image. And these little cutter bee scissors also help me do the job really nicely. So once I'm all cleaned up from that, I am just going to cut down my sentiment a little bit. I'm just going to make it into kind of a nice strip that goes either side of the sentiment. And then it's a matter of putting everything together. Now, one of the only things that you need to be careful of when using vellum on your cards is how you are going to attach it without seeing the adhesive through the vellum. So here I'm going to take the right hand side and I put a little bit of double-sided tape there, and I'm going to wrap that around the back of the edge. I have cut this card panel down to be 4 by 5 1/4 inches, and then I'm going to add a little bit of double-sided tape on that other side, but I know that the flower is going to cover this up because when I pop this down here, that is what the adhesive looks like, and you can see it through the vellum. So ideally we wouldn't have that showing. Now, just so that I can pop my flower up and give it a little bit of dimension, I'm kind of squishing it all up so that the bottom is flat. And I have these are, I think, the Daubers strips, and I'm just going to tear these apart and pop up a little bit of the leaves so that there's a little bit more dimension. Now, any foam squares, foam tape, anything like that underneath this will pop them up. I am just trying to use up little bits and pieces of spares that I have in my stash. I am putting some double-sided tape flat on the bottom, and that way the bottom of the flower will sit flat and the leaves will sit up just a little bit, and then making sure the flower is kind of sitting the right way around. And I will just tuck under a couple of those leaves. I've added a little bit of liquid glue under there so that they will stay in place. Then I'm going to pop that onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base, and that is pretty much going to be my card for today. I will need to cut off a little bit of that flower on the side just so that it sits nice and flush with the edge of the card too. But I hope that you have enjoyed seeing this technique. It was so much fun. You can colour it with whichever inks you want to. Use multiple embossing powders to layer them up. So let me know what you think of this in the comment section down below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!